might have a few people that I'm running late this morning. So welcome to our Increasing Resilience and Accelerating Productivity 5-day challenge. We've got 5 mornings together this week. At the end of today, I'll talk a bit about tomorrow because tomorrow's the exception for this week. But we're meeting this morning, half an hour maximum. We'll be finished just before 9 so that you can get on to the rest of your day and, of course, be productive and prioritize what's most important this week. But I want to cover some different topics as we go through the 5 days this week. We're going to look holistically at resilience and productivity, and we're going to look at specific techniques and principles. But today we're going to start really foundationally at the beginning. So let me start with foundations of resilience and productivity. If we don't get the foundations right, you'll know this in your roles, and more importantly, you'll know this in your life, right? If you don't get the foundations right, then everything else, it really can kind of becomes more fragile and more vulnerable. So we have to get foundations right. And when we think about foundations, actually, that's about us. So we are the number one component of resilience and productivity. And if we think about the fundamentals of health and well-being, there are 4 kind of components we have to think about. So we have to think about recharging ourselves, resting, sleeping, and just actually making sure that from an energy perspective, we've got everything we need to do to preserve and manage our energy. And we'll talk a bit about that as we go through this week. And then the second thing we need to think about is movement and exercise, getting ourselves active, moving, doing something that actually makes the heart rate increase. And that improves our overall well-being and general health. Then we think about nutrition and diet, eating the right things. We're not going to talk about these foundations. We won't talk about all of them in detail this week, but nutrition and diet is important. So, and that's different for everybody, right? So what nourishes us, what is important for each of us is slightly different depending on where we are in our stages of life and depending on how much activity we're doing. But working on nutrition and diet is also important. And then finally, mental well-being and making sure that we look after ourselves. Psychologically, we're primed and we feel good about ourselves in the world. Really important that we get those 4 components in place. And if you're a leader leading teams or leading people, working in a business where you have a leadership responsibility, we have to think about these 4 areas for our teams as well. Because if they're not looking after themselves and then they're having trouble being productive, prioritizing, showing resilience, then actually sometimes coming back to some of these foundations is important. And as leaders, it's quite difficult to have these conversations, but actually sharing some of the principles can be quite useful. So first things first, foundational principles for ourselves. But then the first step for me really is thinking about, are we recharging and resting? And you probably weren't expecting me to talk about sleep this morning, but I'm going to talk about sleep because it's really interesting that the human, right? So man, as they, we use the term man, but it's human. The human is the only mammal that willingly delays sleep. Every other mammal, if they need to sleep, they sleep. They don't put it off. They don't procrastinate on it. They don't stay up a little bit later. They always sleep when they need to. And it's really important because it's how we, sleep is how we regenerate. It's how we recharge ourselves. And regular exercise any other time than before bed contributes towards better sleep. So regular, movement, activity. They say that 7 to 9 hours is statistically the ideal amount of sleep. There's quite a window there. For some people, it may be less. For some people, it may be more. But 7 to 9 hours is the ideal amount of sleep. And as we looked at on our foundations chart, sleep is just as important as diet and exercise to our well-being, our overall well-being, both physically and psychologically. And interestingly, that I didn't know this until I started researching this a few years back, but not enough sleep increases the appetite. So there's this appetite regulating hormone called leptin. And if we don't get enough sleep, we don't produce enough leptin. So actually we start to feel hungrier throughout the day. So there's a link between sleep and hunger. And then sleep deprivation also reduces what they call cytokine production. And it's a protein that strengthens the immune system. So if we don't have enough sleep, we can actually find that our immune system starts to get compromised as well. So it's not just, I should get some sleep because I'll feel better during the day. There's real kind of science and physiological benefits here. And the other interesting fact is that depriving ourselves of sleep has the same impact on cognitive function, how well we operate, how well and clearly we focus and think, as alcohol. So you start to deprive yourself of sleep, you actually have the same impact as if you were, consuming alcohol. And I think the stats I read were it's 2 units for every hour lost. So that's quite significant in terms of how that impacts our ability to operate. So we think about productivity. If we don't get these foundations in place, we can actually compromise without thinking about it. So 4 ways to optimize sleep. One is creating the optimum environment to sleep. So think about, your bed, your bedding, the lighting, and the temperature, and then natural aromas in the room where you're going to sleep. To think about your schedule and having a fixed wake up time every day. So the more fixed that wake up time is every day, the more consistent, the better your sleep pattern will be. And deciding how many hours you'll get that you want to get. If you know you need 8 hours, work out what time am I getting up, and then work backwards, and then of course stick to that timing. Sounds obvious, but sometimes the obvious things aren't the things that we do. And then think about our kind of pre-bedtime routine. So making sure that we've got some wind down time before you go to bed, not moving from one active or activity straight into bed, because that will compromise our ability to sleep. Disconnecting from devices, so a minimum of 30 minutes before you're going to go to bed. Lowering and dimming the lights in the room that you're in. And then managing the day effectively. So having some form of movement and exercise regularly in your routine, being careful of caffeine volumes later in the day, especially in the evening, when that might kind of stimulate your thinking, stimulate your mind. And the final thing is, and I found this really useful myself, is making notes of what's on your mind well before you're planning to go to bed. So whether you're capturing the things that you've done that day or things you need to do the next day, but making sure that you've got some notes about that before you go to bed can really help you compartmentalize it. So there's 4 ways to optimize the way that we sleep. And I'll just give you a moment just to think about what as I was going through that. As I say, I don't think you probably weren't expecting the first thing we talk about to be sleep. But as I was going through that, some things will have occurred to you. So I'd love to just invite you to jump into the chat and just make a note in the chat of kind of maybe one thing that you, as I was going through that, you were thinking you need to change or improve around your sleep. So let me just make the chat live. There we go. The chat is here. Just one thing in the chat that you were thinking about as we were going through that sleep routine and changes to your sleep routine. And while you're doing that, from my perspective, I've noticed this over the years that whenever I've compromised sleep, I've noticed compromising my performance. There's a direct correlation between how alert and focused I am, depending on the level of sleep I get. Thank you, Heidi. So turn the tech off earlier. No last minute scrolls on the phone as I set my alarm. Yeah, it's very tempting, isn't it? Because for most of us, the phone is the alarm, and that's also the same vehicle that we need to keep on tech. Thank you, Heidi. Steve, think about preparing for sleep. So what do you need to do to prepare to go to sleep? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Steve. Joe, not sure I'll ever get up early on a Sunday. No, fair play, Joe. I can appreciate that. And I think, it's useful for all of us to have days where we do sleep in a bit longer, right? So we catch up. Thank you, Joe. Molly, pre-bedtime routine, make sure all devices are off before I go to bed. Brilliant. Thank you, Molly. Excellent. And for those of you who perhaps came in a bit later, we're talking about, foundations. If we don't get sleep, it's such a foundation for the way that we operate, the way that we can focus and deliver and perform, that we have to get this right and start to think about this for ourselves. And Manjula, thank you. Think about natural aromas, things that might help you to feel more comfortable and relaxed before going to bed. Brilliant. Thank you, Manjula. That's excellent. Okay, so let me, so that's sleep. I don't want to just cover sleep. The second thing I want to talk about today, and I want you to think about this in the context of for tomorrow. So we're going to jump back in at tomorrow's session. Think about today. What will you do differently that's going to help you for tomorrow? Okay. So we've got changes to sleep routine. let me talk now a little bit about morning routine. So we've got sleep, and then we've got how do we start each day? How do we start each day with the most effective kind of approach that we can to, the way that we show up every day. So mindset we'll talk about tomorrow. So tomorrow's session is all about mindset. But I'd like you to think about how we start each day, and that becomes the first step of the journey to discovering, the highest levels of performance for us and an opportunity going forward. So I'd like you to think about each morning when you get up, how do you start every day? And I think about four things, okay? So the first thing I think about is, they call it priming. So priming yourself mentally and psychologically. So how do we do that in a way that creates a level of positive psychology for ourselves every day? The second thing is then, physically, how do we make sure that we've got some part of our day that generates some kind of physical health, like a foundation for physical health? The third is then thinking about generating the right level of energy to get us going so that we meet the day with the right level of positive energy that we want to help us show up in the best way possible. And then the fourth is about creating a level of clarity and calm as we start each day. Okay, so these are four areas these are four areas I think about. These are four areas when you look at some of the evidence around how do you create the ideal morning routine. I don't know if anybody's read The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma, but that's a great book. I'm not a member of the 5 a.m. Club, but I'm kind of just after 6, maybe sometimes 6:30, depending on the day. But that I find that gives me enough time to be able to do what I need to do. But think about the different areas as you start the day. So I'm quite happy to share my morning routine. I'll share this with you, and then I'll just open up to some feedback from you, and then I'll get you to think about what changes you're going to make. So first thing I do, I learned 3 power questions, they call them, but from Tony Robbins about probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And the 3 power questions that he recommends that you ask and answer every morning. And I've done this now for a number of years, at least kind of 7 or 8 years. And the 3 questions that he recommends, and they're really interesting. The first question is, what am I most grateful for in my life right now? And the subtext is, without anything else happening, right? So nothing else has to happen. What am I most grateful for in my life right now? And it's a really interesting question, because what it gets you to do is really think about the fundamentals of your life, right? The things that actually we take for granted, but we should be grateful for. And, it could be running water, electricity, having a roof over your head, could be, having your family, friends around you, waking up and being healthy, all that stuff that any other day we absolutely take for granted, right? And there's a reason that's the first question. The reason that's the first question is because very often a lot of the research shows that one of the highest emotions that we can feel, one of the highest vibrational emotions we can feel, is gratitude. And gratitude really does set a frame for us feeling much more secure in ourselves and confident about ourselves in the world. So first question, what am I most grateful for in my life right now? Second question, so I ask and answer that. This is all before I actually get up. Okay, so I'm normally awake 10 minutes before my alarm, just because of the natural rhythm. So rather than just lie there and doze, I immediately ask these 3 questions. What am I most grateful for in my life right now? Second question is, what am I most excited about in my life right now? So I go from feeling grateful to feeling, actually, well, what should I be excited about? What's coming up this week? What's coming up in the next few weeks? And it's really interesting that is about generating energy, right? It's about generating the right level of energy and the right level of kind of excitement about getting started into your day. And then the third question I ask, and again, I wish I could claim these, but they are Tony Robbins questions. The third question I ask is, how do I make sure today is an absolutely brilliant day? Okay. And what that prompts me to do is start to think about the things that are coming up today and how I'm going to show up and what I'll do to deliver it in those different elements of the day. It's surprisingly effective. So I do those 3 questions. It takes me no more than 5 or 10 minutes. Some days it's quicker than others, depending on how much time I've got before the alarm goes off. But I ask and answer those 3 questions, and then the alarm goes, and I'm up, and I'm kind of feeling energized about the day. So this is about the background noise that I kind of set for myself at the start of every day. Then I get up, and the first thing I do is brush my teeth, and then I exercise. So every day, first thing I do between 45 minutes and an hour of exercise, depending on how much time I've got. So this morning, I have a home gym. So I was about 50 minutes in the home gym this morning, and I did a combination of kind of conditioning and strength exercise, focusing mainly on the shoulders and the arms and the core. So that was this morning. And then at the end of that, I allow myself 10 minutes to stretch. So stretching and mobility is really important as I get older. I'll be 52 this year. And so stretching and mobility has become more important as I get older. And I allow myself 10 minutes to stretch, and then I sit, and I'll just have 5 minutes where I just like this calm. I wouldn't call it a meditation. It's probably more like mindfulness. So it's more about being present, thinking about the day coming up, recognizing that, I've kind of exercised, and the feeling I get from the exercise, kind of enjoying that. And then I get a shower, I get ready, and here I am in front of you all this morning. So that was this morning's routine. So when you break it down, what I'm trying to do is start the day with some kind of gratitude and appreciation. Rehearse what I'm going to do that day, so that there are no surprises. I start to think about how do I create a really positive intention for the day. Then I exercise and I generate energy first thing, because I know that on the days where I don't do that, the difference in my ability to show up and the difference in my resilience is like night and day. So such a difference on the days when I do and don't exercise. So I do it every day during the week. Five days a week I'll exercise. And then mindfulness and meditation is about giving me that sense of being present in the moment. So I'm not racing through the past or racing to the future. And it's quite a nice way to just center yourself ahead of the day. So that's my morning routine. I hope that's useful for you. Once you get these things in place, you see the you see the quote on the right here, right? Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. It really does work out that way. You just start to build in these things into your life, and they become automatic. And the things that are automatic tend to shape what we do. So Heidi says, love the Tony Robbins daily questions. Thank you for sharing those. My pleasure. My pleasure, Heidi. So let's think about your morning routine then. So hopefully you've got a couple of actions in terms of sleep and how we start to create the optimal environment for sleep, the right, the right approach to being able to consistently get the level of sleep that you need to perform, because it's such a foundation. And then this second area here then is what's your morning routine? So perhaps start to think about what changes you might need to make to your morning routine as you think about, foundations for resilience and productivity. We've got sleep is important. Then we've got this, okay, what do we do first thing in the morning to prime ourselves every day to give us the best chance of hitting the day, meeting the day with the right level of energy, the right level of focus, the right level of engagement. So if I can ask you just to, everyone's reflecting and I can see you're all taking notes, that's good. If I can ask you just to drop something into the chat about your kind of morning routine, what might you need to do to adjust or amend your morning routine so that you've got the sleep and then the right approach to start every day to perform at the highest level possible. This is what we're talking about, building resilience and productivity. As we go through this week, we're going to go through lots of different principles, but if we don't get these first couple of foundations in place, there's no traction. The other techniques that we talk about just don't really give you the leverage that we're looking for. So just when you're ready, something in the chat around your morning routine. There's something I discovered in lockdown, which as we're talking about this today, it's kind of made me start to think. I discovered a channel on YouTube about Tai Chi, and I don't know if anybody's tried meditation. Meditation can be quite difficult because you just stop the mind racing, to stop yourself. It's not about stopping thoughts. It's about perhaps trying to not get involved with your thoughts so much, is what I've discovered. But what I discovered a YouTube channel, guy called Jake Mace, who does different Tai Chi lessons, and they call Tai Chi the moving meditation. So it's a way to slow your body down and slow your thoughts down. I found it quite powerful, actually. I did it for quite a while throughout lockdown and then beyond, but I moved away from it. Not for any reason other than I just kind of got busy and doing other things. So my one thing today is actually to go back through some of those Tai Chi principles, because they're so useful at the end of a workout to kind of bring the mind and the body together. It's really useful. Anyway, hopefully that's useful again. Manjula, thank you. Like your explanation for the Tony Robbins questions. My routine is like yours on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but need to introduce walking or yoga on Tuesday and Thursday. Brilliant. Thanks, Manjula. Excellent. And hopefully that's useful for you to start to think about the importance of these things, because this is about us, right? We think about resilience and productivity. Nobody else can do it for us. Only we can do it. And I think that's the key distinction. Heidi, thank you. Don't go on my phone first thing. Continue with my routine minus the phone. Yeah, great. So we're cutting it out at the end of the day and the start of the day, Heidi, right? Yeah, cutting out the phone. Yeah, good. And it'll all be there when you finally get to it. It'll all still be there when you finally get to the phone. Good. Steve says, become more intentional about preparing for the day. Regulate thoughts before just getting started. Yeah, it's a great one. Thanks, Steve. Kind of that's really something I focus on as well. It's a good way to bring myself back to that too. Heidi, there's a pattern here for me, the blinking phone. Yeah. And I think you'll find, Heidi, it's probably 99% of the population feel the same. Molly says, set an earlier alarm to take 10 minutes for myself before everyone else is up for the day. Yeah, nice. Thanks, Molly. And sometimes that's all it takes, right? Just that short window of time for yourself to do something, whatever that something is that's useful for you. Joe says, I plan to do all of that, but life and kids sometimes scupper it. I overslept this morning and missed my Zoom yoga, so I've rebooted for after this, or rebooked, I think she means. I've rebooked for after this. Also, my quiet time when I listen to Calm app meditation disappeared too. But you've got the Calm app as well, Joe. Brilliant, thank you. Heidi also says, ask myself the question, how do I need to make sure today is an absolutely brilliant day? Yeah, great. And it's such a simple but powerful directional question. It forces us to answer in the direction that we want, which is, how do I make the day the way I want it to be? Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. So we're 25 minutes in. I'm going to wrap up because I want to give you some time before your 9 o'clock. Let me stop sharing my screen. Tomorrow morning session, actually, I'm not going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to share it again. Tomorrow morning session will be at 8 a.m. because I've got an 8:30 tomorrow. So if you're okay, tomorrow is 8. It's not 8:30. So the invitation in your diaries is correct. Tomorrow is 8. I will also share this with you. I don't know if anybody's in our coaching leaders group on LinkedIn. If you're not, feel free to join. It's completely free. The whole idea of this group is that I put a lot of our assets into this group. So if you want to access any of the previous recordings, any of the previous replays of these sessions, they're all in that group. The LinkedIn group ID is here. Let me just capture that so that you can... and I'll put it in the chat. So if anybody wants to get to it now, they can get to it straight away. So here's the LinkedIn group. There you go. And I will ask you to think. We talked about one thing. We talked about two things today, and hopefully one thing you can do in both of those areas. Just think about what will it take for you to be able to do this. So you've got this idea. You've got a couple of ideas around sleep and morning routine. What will it take to make this stick? What can you do to make this stick? So that's a really good question. I'm going to ask you about this tomorrow. So we'll pick up tomorrow where we've left off today. But what can you do to make this stick? We are at 3 minutes to 9. If you have a 9 o'clock, feel free to run. So session is over. If you have a 9 o'clock, feel free to run. I will just stop and answer. Joe's got a hand up, so we'll just ask Joe to say hi, and I'll take your question, and then we'll wrap up. Joe, over to you.
Sorry, can you just go back onto that LinkedIn leadership slide thing?
Yes, of course. Yeah, this
so
one.
I can get the details. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've just put the link, Joe, in the chat.
Yeah, but I'm not technical enough to grab it out there. Just.
Thank you, Joe. You should just be able to click on it, but no worries. Yeah, type it in. Join our LinkedIn group. I'm going to say thanks, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the challenge this week, and hopefully join us tomorrow, and we'll check in on today. And tomorrow we're going to start to talk about growth mindset. How do we start to cultivate the right mindset for high performance? Okay, thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Great to see you. Have a great day. See you then. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. See you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.